Okay, it's Red versus Blue, episode number 52. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
Welcome back. The inauguration has happened, so we're going to cover a few things involving that. But first, let's talk about a Wall Street Journal article that sort of gives us the idea where we're going.
Well, Mike, every administration begins with a 100-day agenda. Franklin Roosevelt, most notably, got most of his New Deal accomplished in the first 100 days. Lyndon Johnson, tremendous accomplishments in his first 100 days, because the public gives you a leash and a reservoir of goodwill. And it's up to an elected official whether he uses that effectively, efficiently to accomplish his big things, or whether he squanders it and wastes it. So the Wall Street Journal, in a poll that was conducted January 9 through 14, just before the swearing in, provides a roadmap. And what the roadmap told, I think, the administration and I think the American people, the Congress, is that what people want is MAGA-like. They like the ideas that Trump ran on. They think there's issues that desperately need to be addressed, the economy and immigration being top of them. But they're very concerned about overdoing it and about going to extremes. And so let's just look at what the poll said was what the American people want. 53% want Trump to make significant changes in government, but 60% oppose replacing civil service workers on a massive basis. 60% oppose eliminating the Department of Education. Only 18% support superseding congressional powers to give Trump more control over spending. 75% support deporting criminals, but 70% would protect long-term residents who are not criminals. 46% support his nominees, but 46% oppose them. So it's a real mixed bag with the people he's recommended for office. 57% opposed pardons for the January 6th rioters. 66% opposed military force to take Greenland. 57% opposed coercion to take the Panama Canal. By 64 to 31%, voters oppose efforts to end birthright citizenship. 48% support tariffs. 46% are opposed. So a very mixed bag, but an opportunity. If Trump calibrates his policy initiatives carefully, he will have broad public support. And if he doesn't, he won't. So let's just look at what he did.
Yeah, I was going to say, now let's talk about the indicators that have happened already, right?
Well, I don't think we're going to remember the Trump inaugural speech the same way we remember the second inaugural of Abraham Lincoln or John F. Kennedy's first inaugural. He proposed to end birthright citizenship. It raises a significant constitutional question with the 14th Amendment. I read some of the briefs being put forth that would allow him to circumvent that. Many of them, one of them anyway, was written by John Eastman, his legal advisor on other matters. He pardoned nearly all of the January 6 rioters, including those who attacked police officers, including a fellow by the name of Ross Ulbricht, who runs something called the Silk Road Drug Marketplace. It's an online marketplace for crypto, fentanyl, and other criminal activities. He directed his cabinet to, quote, bring down prices. And my guess is that this is going to be the excuses. I told my cabinet to bring down prices, and they failed me. It's not my fault. When we get down the line, he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, claiming $1 trillion of savings. I think people were scratching their heads wondering how Elon Musk was going to save $3 billion out of the budget. I think this is how the first trillion is going to get counted. He pulled out of UNRWA, the United Nations relief workers who are active in Palestine and Gaza, pulled out of the World Health Organization. He ended subsidies to EV manufacturers, EV car buyers, which is the primary source of revenue for Elon Musk, but also have plants in many red congressional districts now. And he proposed that we go to Mars. So while we're cutting trillions of dollars out of the budget, we're apparently going to find the money to put the flag on Mars, just because I guess we can, or because Elon thinks it's a good idea. He wants to end government censorship of the media. He wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America and rename Mount Denali, replace the name back with Mount McKinley. Now, that happens to be opposed by Alaska's 2 Republican senators, and they're opposed to this proposal. And what you see happening is because he has been frivolous with his ideas, Republicans, in this case the senators from Alaska, are free to oppose him. They're not going to get hurt by the voters in Alaska because changing the name to Mount McKinley is not popular there.
Right.
So when you do these frivolous things, you allow people to create distance with you. It makes your ability to bring their votes in on other issues much more difficult.
Let me stop you real quickly. Does these sort of things create, however, distractions that allow him to do other things that people don't see?
Well, they do. I mean, he's been doing a lot that hasn't really been reported on because there's just so many column inches in the newspaper.
Right.
So part of that is going on. But part of it also is it's defining him as an unserious person who just sort of stream of consciousness throws things out.
Right.
He's not reading the polls to make policy. Some people would say that's good. But he is spending his goodwill and his account with the American public much too fast. And when he becomes too toxic because he is a lame duck president, despite what it may look like now, Republicans will in fact abandon him. And that's, I think, what's going to happen as we get further on.
Because a lot of those Republicans are also looking 2 years ahead to the next midterm elections, which they will be affected by.
Well, that's right. And we have not seen a lot of transferability of the Trump-Treflon to other candidates. And that's front of mind to all of the senators and to all of the House members. Now, if you've got if you're in a safe House district where everybody's a MAGA, you've got to stay pretty close. But if you're running statewide, just about any place in America, you have got to be very sensitive to not being foolish and stupid.
Right. Exactly.
And let's just take, for example, the January 6 pardons. What they have done is they've required Republican talking heads that go on TV to debase and humiliate themselves in an attempt to justify that. I saw Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama, not one of the brightest members of the Senate, go on TV and say that he never saw rioters attacking police officers. He just didn't see it. Now, the commercial of him saying that and pictures of actual rioters beating police officers, that commercial writes itself. Now, it may not take down Tuberville in Alabama, but it's going to take down people in marginal districts who allow nonsense to creep into their vocabulary. And the debasing and humiliation of Republicans to support that has been somewhat breathtaking.
Now, it's been reported that they just didn't want to do the work on those pardons, and that it was a lot of work to determine who were the violent ones, who weren't. And at the end of the day, Trump just said, literally, F it, let them all out.
I've read the same reports, and it's not at all hard to imagine that that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, so that's not a good thing, right?
Not a good thing.
Okay. What else can we glean from that poll? Because there's a lot of information there. Is he going to accomplish any of those things that the American people want? A couple of the other things you mentioned, he's off the rail as well with the American people, according to the polls. Where do you think he's going to go with some of these other issues?
I think he will be scored a success on immigration, but he will lose a lot of his initiatives. And if the Republicans in Congress get together and write a cogent tax bill, he'll score on the economy. But already, economists are forecasting that inflation and interest rates are going to be higher because of the Trump policies. So he is at counter purposes with the objectives he promised the American people he is going to attempt to do. And as we saw with the California fires, as we saw with Joe Biden, the American patience can get very thin with non-accomplishment.
Yeah, and let's go back to what we talked about during the campaign the whole time, is that the average guy in middle America who's trying to feed his family and all of that, they didn't buy into the Biden policies because they could see literally when they went to the grocery store that there were problems with the pricing. I sense that we're not going to see any let up in that.
Well, there's no reason to believe there will be. I mean, you can put more money in the economy, you can cut government spending, you can hopefully try to reduce interest rates that way. But if we are simultaneously putting tariffs on goods, and most of them are low-cost goods that come into the country, or cars or things people have to buy, people are going to see that price impact when they go to the market, when they go to the car dealerships, when they try to buy housing goods. And they're going to know, there's nobody else to blame now but the Republicans.
And that's the bottom line with a lot of people, right? All the other issues don't mean much when you can't feed your family.
That's exactly right. Now, a good tax bill will be helpful, but they've got some wood to chop to get there.
Right, exactly. Okay, well, we will keep an eye on this because I think this is going to be the issue. Now, I did notice that the stock market is creeping back up, so he's going to be in a good place with people that own stock and the richer people. So if he can keep that going up, which he has no control over, right?
Well, he doesn't. Now, the market gave back all of the post-election gains in November and December. We've had a couple of good days in January.
Right.
So the market is beginning to get back. It's going to be differentiated. So energy is doing well. Technology sort of was lagging a little bit. We'll see. There's going to be winners and losers. Interest rate sensitive stocks, if you're a bank, you're making money. If you're a home builder or a real estate agency, probably not.
Yeah. And it's playing into the stereotype that's sort of being brought when you line up those billionaires at his inauguration, that he's there for the rich people, not for the people that got washed out of even witnessing the inauguration.
Well, the interesting thing is that the rich people are fighting amongst themselves. He announced a big multi-billion-dollar investment in OpenAI with SoftBank, who was also behind his Foxconn investment that didn't pan out to anything last term, to develop AI. And now they're at war because OpenAI and Elon Musk are in court together fighting each other. He's going to have to take sides in the billionaire fight, and we'll see where he picks. But it's not going clearly or easily.
Yeah. Okay. TikTok became an issue, went away for 14 hours.
And it came back. Trump delayed the ban. They issued a message on TikTok thanking Donald Trump for bringing TikTok back. Mm-hmm. Now, this was a big deal. I mean, people dressed up in funeral garb to commemorate the death of TikTok. Trump claims that he brought it back because he won the youth vote by 35 points. Just so that we fact check, he actually lost under 30s by 4 points. He carried men by 16. He lost women by 24. But it's a big deal for millennials and Gen Xers. Some of them moved over to Red Note, which is a little bit more obviously a communist Chinese site. But I talked to one millennial who said, we went over to Red Note and we found out exactly how good things are in communist China, better than they are here.
Yikes.
And I talked to a 10-year-old, because Fortnite apparently is also owned by a Chinese company, who opined that, well, if they cancel Fortnite, then we really do have a problem. So the propaganda is working. The Chinese are getting their money's worth for their investments there. He did propose that the United States government be given a half ownership interest in TikTok, which would make for a government-owned propaganda outlet. I'm sure he's thought through that, or what it might look like if the next administration takes over.
Right.
It's, again, some economic illiteracy going on there.
But there are people looking at TikTok as something that they might buy, right?
Quite a few buyers are queued up. O'Leary, the guy from Shark Tank, wants to buy a piece of it. Of course, he's a Canadian. You've got Musk, who may want to buy it. You've got all kinds of potential buyers who may want to get a piece of it. And of course, they're all also owners of competing media. So Lord only knows what it's going to turn out to be. And the big issue with the Chinese is, whether or not they're going to allow the algorithm, which was what gives TikTok its value, to be sold with the company. So we'll see what he does.
We got 90 days to sort this out.
90 days, yeah. So the clock is running. I don't think anybody has thought through the implications of the United States being given a half ownership interest in the company. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. But again, this is another battlefront that's been opened between the tech bros against each other, who are all trying to suck up to Trump, right, and their competing interest, along with the national interest, along with the Chinese interest. It's interesting to note that this week, Vivek Ramaswamy, who thought that he might get appointed to the Senate from Ohio, he was not, has decided he's going to run for governor of Ohio, and he's been pushed out of the Doge committee because of Elon Musk. Elon Musk was one ego too large for that program. So Vivek is out. He apparently is as annoying behind the doors of the White House as he is outside the doors to American people. And I think his star is going to fade pretty rapidly. But now it's all Elon and his efforts to cut government spending. They actually took over a government agency called basically Doge and changed the acronym a little bit and just repopulated it so that it became a government agency by changing the purpose of what the agency was created for, as opposed to this outside group of consultants. So they're off to the races. I'm not expecting much. There's plenty of opportunity to cut government spending, not a lot of opportunity to cut $2 trillion worth.
Okay, let's move on to the inauguration speeches. I got to be honest with you, I didn't watch much of it. I sort of put blinders on to the day. So give us a fuller picture.
Well, again, the speech is not going to rival John Kennedy or Abraham Lincoln in terms of lifting moral standards or inspiring the country. It was more complaints and his ongoing rants about how he was mistreated. The real speech was the one he gave at Emancipation Hall. That's the visitor center in the Capitol that was built a few years ago, to his supporters who could not get into the rotunda. And that was a complete stream of consciousness of Trump simply airing his grievances in a way that was babbling incoherently. It's interesting to note that Trump is 5 months older than Joe Biden was when Joe Biden was sworn in as president 4 years ago. So he's now the oldest president to take office after his inauguration. My prediction is that within a few weeks, you're going to hear a whole raft of stories of, is he losing it? And we'll hear those stories much easier with Biden. And because they actually kept Biden sort of hidden and boxed and programmed, and you can't do that with Trump, it's going to be much more obvious to the world and to the American people. Today, he spoke to business leaders assembled in Davos, Switzerland, by a remote connection, and it was the same old thing. It was, here he is talking to the smartest, brightest, richest people in the world, babbling incoherently. Now, all of them, and I've spoken to people this week who are money managers, who watch the economy, all of them take this for what it is. They look for the opportunity where they can make money by sucking up to his ego or by finding the little niche he wants to go to. And they're going to exploit that. Nobody is going to exploit it more than the Chinese and the Russians. We had 3 official inaugural balls in Washington, but the most festive ball, I'm sure, was held in the Kremlin, celebrating the inauguration of President Trump this week.
Oh, wow.
And let me just say, by the way, the most despicable action he had was when he went to the Capital One Center, where a big rally where the parade was moved, and used the Hamas hostage families as props, where he moved off completely talking about the situation in Palestine and in Gaza, and talked about ranting on Biden and other off topics. It was really, frankly, a disgusting display.
Are the American people going to be worn out by his continuous discussion of Biden and the past?
Yes, and his grievances and the other things that don't really matter to them when they go to the grocery store. So people are going to get tired of that. Now, the MAGA base, they're going to eat it up. They're going to love it. They're in seventh heaven this week.
Sure.
But the great majority of American people, the thing about being president is that you get wall-to-wall media coverage. So unless you are a political groupie or a MAGA loyalist, or you went to the rallies, or you tuned into Fox and didn't leave it, you never really saw a full hour and 45-minute, MAGA rant of stream of consciousness from Trump.
Right.
Now, all America is going to see that. All the world is going to see that. And people are going to begin scratching their heads. And if it takes much longer to get economic results at the grocery store, people are going to lose interest real quick, and the attention span is going to go to somebody who can better deliver for America.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Because we do this show and we're political type people, we live in that political bubble, the big bubble of all of politics, and most Americans don't.
But they're seeing, and some of them are seeing it for the first time. You can say, well, I'm MAGA, I wanted him in there to get change, but when they don't see the change they want, or they see change that's going in a counterproductive way, or they see, backstabbing or corruption or whatever, and particularly if they don't see impacts in how much taxes they pay and in how much they pay for goods and services, they're going to look elsewhere quickly.
Yeah, it comes back to the goods and services almost always. It always leads back to that.
And I've never seen where you can direct your cabinet secretaries to lower prices, and that works.
Yeah, what are they going to do? Okay, let's talk about the confirmation hearings that are still going on. What are you seeing there?
Well, so far, Trump is 1 for, 25. Marco Rubio was confirmed on a unanimous vote on Inauguration Day, so we have a Secretary of State. However, the other hearings have been somewhat held up. There's new evidence on Pete Hegseth. Today, there'll be a cloture vote in the Senate to see if they can shut off debate and then vote on his nomination tomorrow, Friday. It's not clear whether the votes are there or not. Usually leadership doesn't schedule a vote unless the votes are there.
Right.
But it's expected he will be very close. Gabbard, Patel, and Kennedy have not yet had their confirmation hearings. I don't think Gabbard has actually completed her FBI interviews yet and forms. So those are held up, and she is sort of twisting slowly in the wind. The other nominees, some of them have had hearings, some of them have not. Most of them are not controversial, but Gabbard, Patel, and Kennedy are very much in limbo. Kennedy wants to continue to be a party to lawsuits he's filed, which creates a massive conflict of interest in his role. But that's how he makes his money, by collecting $2 million fees suing companies, and he doesn't want to give that up.
Right.
So you've got, although his wife, Cheryl Hines, did give up her cosmetic company on his behalf, or will if he's confirmed. So they're still on the bubble. Hegseth, I think, is going to get through, but it will be by 1 or 2 votes. And we'll see about the rest of them. But again, it's slowing the ability to get things done. And here's the thing. Pam Bondi, as Attorney General, probably had a pretty good hearing, as good as could be expected. She did well. But she's now going to be forced to go back and answer questions about abuses happening at the Justice Department before she even gets there that Trump has sort of made happen. And that's going to slow, that will slow her process down. And the more he does in other departments, it's going to slow the processes down there, which is going to make it more difficult for Trump to get out of the gates in this first 100 days and get the stuff done that needs to get done. Everybody thinks it's shock and awe, but, telling everybody that, stop DEI and telling everybody cut prices is not exactly policymaking. It's just sort of performative. And to get to real policymaking, he needs to put people in place. He needs to get a tax bill and a budget bill written. And he is shorthanded doing that because of all of the nonsense that's surrounding us.
Let me ask you this about the confirmations that I was a little bit surprised about is the 99-0 vote for Marco Rubio. What do you see in that particular vote? Unlike
Matt Gaetz, who had no friends in Congress, Marco Rubio is a congenial fellow who is easy to work with, who is easy across the aisle, who is respected by his colleagues, and who has mainstream views. Nobody's going to find really a Marco Rubio speech where he's saying, let's kill all the Muslims, or the stuff Pete Hegseth has done.
Right.
I don't think he has objectionable tattoos. He's a Cuban refugee, or his parents were Cuban refugees. So, he's a mainstream Republican, and he has broad support, and he has respect by his Democratic colleagues, who have decided, I think, to pick their fights carefully. And that was not a fight they were going to pick.
Everything you said about him is true, but is he going to be locking horns with Trump on a lot of issues because he is more moderate and more understanding of the world view?
Undoubtedly. Today he cut off Mike Pompeo was under a death fatwa from Iran. He cut off his Secret Service protection. I think it was State Department protection. He cut off the protection for John Bolton simply as a matter of personal pique, because they actually brought sanity and reality to the Trump foreign policy in the first term. I cannot imagine a circumstance where Rubio does not have conflicts with the impulses, anyway, of Trump and the people around him, particularly if Tulsi Gabbard becomes head of national intelligence. So that's going to be a very challenging situation for him to maneuver, and will test his diplomatic skills. Today at the Davos speech, for example, the United States, have been working to get our NATO allies to a 3% contribution level in terms of national defense. Today, he raised just off the top of his head, raised it to 5%. That has profound budget implications for our European allies, and I'm not even sure we're at 5%, frankly, at the U.S. So it's stuff like that that's going to create international tensions, not amongst our adversaries, but amongst our friends, which is why I say again that the biggest inaugural ball was in the Kremlin.
We've talked a lot about how there aren't going to be any guardrails this time, but I guess Marco Rubio could be one of those possible guardrails.
Most of the world is hoping exactly for that.
All right. Anything else we need to cover?
Well, stay tuned because, literally hour to hour, there are new appointments, there are new pronouncements, there are stuff that he says off the cuff. One thing about Trump is he is going to be media available. He did a long interview with Sean Hannity last night that was mostly a rehash of old grievances and nonsense. But I mean, there'll be a microphone in front of him every day, and every day he's going to say something, and every day it's going to be newsworthy.
Right. Well, we will be on it. We are not doing it weekly now, but we're doing it whenever we need to. We'll be taking some longer breaks down the line, but I think we're going to be here for a while, and I hope you appreciate that. Subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. Leave us a review on iTunes if you can. Check us out on Facebook, and we will see you next time on another edition of Red versus Blue.
Stay safe, everybody. Thanks.